So recently, I'm sure you saw, there was an attempt to fund the Libs to own the Libs, and I really didn't like it. And what's annoying is I really like the people involved, apart from AOC, of course. And so I was just kind of watching what seems to be some kind of like embarrassing blunder. And I mean, it didn't quite make the point they were trying to make. But anyway, so this began with AOC tweeting out this tweet thread where she says, just over a week ago, my abuela, which is, I assume, Spanish for grandmother or something like that, fell ill. I went to Puerto Rico to see her my first time in a year because of COVID. This is her home. Hurricane Maria relief hasn't arrived. Trump blocked relief dollars for public relations. People are being forced to flee ancestral homes. Ooh, ancestral. That sounds important. And developers are taking them. We immediately got to work reaching out to community leaders and advocates and following the money. What happened to Puerto Ricans is systemic. Much of it can be traced to Hunter, I think it's pronounced, aka the Wall Street Connected Fiscal Control Board, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, corruption in Puerto Rico. What a shock, right? But I want to be clear, while the Trump admin had a major role, it wasn't just them. To turn this around, we need audits and get recovery relief to people ASAP without the onerous strings. And for the record, my abuela is doing okay. It's not about us. It's about what's happening to Puerto Ricans across the island. She has a place to go and be cared for, but what about thousands of people who don't? And of course, the question is, well, why don't you do something actually like tangible with your vast platform of millions of subscribers, most of whom are not in your constituency, obviously, and just do a fundraiser for them or something like that. You know, you could set up a non-profit maybe and make sure that the money goes to the place where it needs to go. And this...
But also just noticing that, like, her abuela's okay, but these other people aren't. Well, then, exactly. Where's the money for the people who aren't?
Yeah, why? What, you know, but instead she can tweet about it, and that's a lot easier. But this got a reply from Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, who's the sort of Catholic theologian of the Daily Wire. But otherwise, to be honest with you, his commentary is generally quite good, which I suppose is an indication of how conservative I've become in the past year. But he says, shameful that you live in luxury while allowing your grandmother to suffer in these squalid conditions. 35,000 likes. It's a pretty good response. And so she replies to Matt because, you know, she knows how the Twitter wars go, and so do the rest. She says, you don't even have a concept for the role that firstborn daughters play in their families. Okay, but then he could just easily turn around and say, okay, well, you don't have a concept of how the firstborn sons play in their families, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's a weird personal attack.
What's it got to do with anything?
Exactly. What's it got to do with anything? He's talking about your particular status as an elected representative who earns $174,000 a year, and you're not even going to spend like 10 grand helping out your gran. You know, I mean, it is obvious that this is you standing on the suffering of your grandmother for political virtue points on Twitter. So it is gross, don't get me wrong. My abuela is okay, but instead of only caring for mine and letting others suffer, I'm calling attention to the systemic injustices. And you seem totally fine with US having fine within having a US colony. I hate when Spanish speakers, people with the surname Cortez, talk about other people being colonizers. I can't stand it. Abuela is not a native indigenous word. It's a Spanish word because Spain is a European country, and they are all the descendants. The Spanish-speaking people in South America and Portugal, in Portuguese-speaking, are all the descendants of colonizers. You're all colonizers, all of you. So don't. And I saw a thing going around the other day on Facebook where it's like, the white man colonized the Americas from the natives, but the Latinos will look after it. It's like, you're colonizers too. What the hell is wrong with you?
Latin, that indigenous language to South America.
Exactly, the indigenous language to South America. Like, you go back to Italy, Latinos, all right? It's like... Anyway, enough of this ridiculousness, them trying to paint the Spanish-speaking areas of the Americas as being native or something, right? But anyway, so she is obviously bitching and moaning on Twitter. But Kathy Griffin had an amazing reply. This is the Trump's head actress or comedian. And she says this, and this is amazing. Thank you for continuing to do a great job. You represent Americans better than we represent ourselves. You aren't an American, according to Kathy Griffin, but thank you for looking like an American. It's amazing. Like, you will never be one of us.
Cortez.
Yeah, Cortez, exactly. But it's got like, I love the reply. Just wow, and it's the achievement unlocked. But yeah, just wow. Because I mean, like that is a genuinely, that's like was it the Ozzy Osbourne's daughter who's like, oh no, we need the Mexicans to clean the toilets. It's like, ooh, that's just bad optics. But anyway, so she proceeded to get raked for her luxury lifestyle because the Conservatives realized this was a moment of weakness for AOC, which it was. And this is all fine. This is great. This is, in fact, good political capital to show that, look, she's a giant hypocrite, which of course she is, blah, blah,
Corrupt
blah.
socialist, won't even help her own family.
Exactly.
Lives in luxury.
Lives in luxury, and so... this is what they're saying. It never fails with these champagne socialists. They expect everyone else to be making sacrifices while making them themselves. Completely true. AOC is willing to redistribute everyone's money but her own, said one of the Parkland school shooting survivors. GOP candidate said, honey, you drive a Tesla and have 2 apartments. If your grandmother is living poor, that's because you don't help her out. I'm surprised a socialist wouldn't redistribute that wealth to their own grandmother. And this is all good and valid critique, and good and valid to people outside of the sort of political Twitter sphere, right? And that's where I think this is important, because, okay, the political Twitter sphere, I think from the outside looking in, as someone who's not on it, it's kind of gross, kind of obviously partisan, but occasionally interesting and productive things come out of it. And this is actually kind of one of them. She looks really bad. You're not helping your own grandmother. You're making stacks of cash. Why aren't you doing something about this? Why are you just bleating about it on Twitter for virtue points? And the thing, though, is that none of this is something that the left cares about, right? The left don't care that she's a giant hypocrite when it comes to this sort of thing. You can look at like a series of videos that Jimmy Dore has done. He's one of her primary critics from the left. And you can see like, AOC swindles her donors, or AOC defending Biden, AOC, allowing the, not objecting to the cops, intimidating her critics, or just generally talking nonsense, which was the next one. Just, word salads, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine, because these are sort of, traditional leftist critiques of people who are effectively joining the swamp, but not because she has creature comforts, and it's not because of her ideology. So these aren't attacks that are going to impact on the left, but what these attacks are supposed to do is persuade the undecided that actually, AOC is being pretty selfish, and the Conservatives have a point here. And then the Conservatives kind of needed to log off, to be honest. Matt Walsh decided he was going to do a fundraiser for AOC's grandmother. Why? As you've heard, no, only people on Twitter have heard, Matt, AOC's abuela, no, you say grandmother because you're not Spanish, right, is living in a dilapidated home that was ravaged by Hurricane Maria. AOC is unable to help her own grandmother for whatever reason. No, you don't say that. You say she's unwilling to help her own grandmother, and you don't say for whatever reason, say because she's a selfish bitch, right? And then that's where that ends. They put the pictures of the apartment, and that's what they end. You don't say, I've set up a GoFundMe to save her home. Why do you care about her grandmother's home? Is there not someone slightly closer to your own home, like, on the continental United States, that you care about more to help? Because he says, I'll kick things off by donating $499, which also happens to be the cost of a monthly lease payment for Tesla. She owns a Tesla that costs like $100,000. I challenge Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, and Jeremy Boring to match this donation. Together we can change the world. What?
Okay, so devil's advocate, I can see the meme kind of here, in which he's like, hey, she won't do it, so how about we do it? And then she'll look ridiculous because we've helped her grandmother out and she hasn't. Yeah. But
no.
Yeah.
I mean, right, this looks like an attempt from Conservatives to drive a wedge between AOC and her own grandmother. Not good optics for Conservatives, because Conservatives should be talking primarily about the sanctity of relationships, that the bonds that hold people together that the left are constantly trying to break. You're actually kind of doing the same thing here, right? You're trying to force AOC's grandmother to choose between your help, which is politically predicated, and the relationship she has with AOC. And you're also trying to shame AOC for the same things. So that's not good, right? And then you've got the alternative aspect of everyone can see this as a partisan political attack, right? From outside of the Twitter sphere, anyone looking in knows that the Daily Wire and the Squad are mortal enemies. This would be very much like the USSR having screwed something up in Cuba or something, and the Americans going, well, we're going to go and help those Cubans because we love them so much. Here you go, Fidel. the USSR wouldn't help you, so here's a bunch of... It's like, you know you're doing this just purely for strategic political reasons, right? So it doesn't wash with anyone else outside of this bubble. But then you've also got the... these people are at war with you. You know, has it not become apparent that the left, especially the radical left, the squad, are openly at war with conservatives? Like, they will do everything to get you defunded, deplatformed. They will cheer as Donald Trump is taken down from everything, a sitting president. They have no concern for the integrity of the system. As Bo did an amazing article about this. Like, look, when the Democrats are in the Congress and Senate and going, look, we're going to pack the courts, we're going to change the voting thing, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, they are laying out the instruments of the Republic's dismemberment right in front of you, and you're like, hey, we're going to fund AOC's grandmother. No, you do not fund your avowed enemies, because everyone can see that you are avowed enemies. I mean, everyone can see this.
Is her grandmother political out of interest?
No, not to my knowledge.
She's just an individual.
The only reason we're talking about this woman is because she's the grandmother of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and it's because Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire crew are at war with her and the rest of the squad. Rightfully so. Don't get me wrong. You have to win this as well. And the reason I'm saying this is because I like the Daily Wire, right? But this was really bad optics, in my opinion. And there's a maxim that I think that every conservative can live by: don't fund the left ever. Do you understand? Don't fund the left. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter what it looks like you could, gain some sort of status out of. They are never going to reciprocate. And as soon as you show any kind of weakness, they will destroy you. They will put you up against the wall, and you know it. Anyway, the Conservatives managed to raise $100,000 for AOC's family. Now, what are you doing sending $100,000 to the family of a communist? What are you doing that for? That's not good, is it? Like, do you think that the money wouldn't somehow go somewhere else? Like, imagine if you gave AOC's grandma $100K, do you think none of that goes to AOC? Do you think none of that goes to any sort of socialist causes? This is no longer just a charitable donation. It's like, is there no one more deserving? Are there no veterans around, pro-America hardcore vets that you could have raised $100,000 for? Like, this political stunt starts looking really hollow.
I mean, that's kind of the point, though. Like, if I'm going to take Matt Walsh's position here, I imagine he would say that, well, it's meant to. That's the whole point. It's to expose that she doesn't care at all. And sure, it's petty and partisan and all the rest of it, but
they'd already done that.
What, by showing that she hadn't given the money?
Yeah.
But then the Conservatives are such good guys, we will even defend people we hate.
But no one thinks that.
Yeah.
No one thinks that they just stumbled across some gentle old woman in Puerto Rico, and they were like, oh my God, this woman's house is still damaged by the hurricane. We better raise some money for her. Oh, she just happens to be AOC's grandmother. No, this is an obvious partisan political attack, right? And this is hollow. It looks bad. And again, it's because, she earns $174K a year, so you've pointed out all of this, that, she earns loads of money, she's got 2 houses, she's got a Tesla. What are you doing? You've already done the job. The job is complete. Now you're overreaching and looking bad, right? But anyway, so moving on to the next one. So it turns out that AOC's family refuses the money. And the thing is, like, again, I just really...
So, I mean, that's a win. Like, it could have been a lot worse. They could have taken the money and given it all to Planned Parenthood or something.
Which would have been the smart thing for her to do, to be honest.
But if they just say, no, we're not taking the money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so Matt Walsh tweeted out, update, someone in AOC Abuela's family told GoFundMe that she won't take the money, even though AOC previously claimed that her grandma was in dire straits and it was Trump's fault. She didn't exclusively claim that, but anyway. AOC still hasn't acknowledged this effort or thanked us. Here's the email from GoFundMe. Yeah, well, it's such a bizarre, statement because, again, the world knows your enemies. This is like Leonidas, going and being like, right, okay, you're not crossing Persians, and then Xerxes going back to his army saying, well, I offered him to be the king of Greece, and he hasn't even thanked me for this. So you're the one invading. You're enemies to each other. This is not something that people are like, oh, well, they're just going to sit around and have a cup of tea afterwards, Of course she's not going to thank you. I can't believe she hasn't blocked you.
I'm trying to be the advocate here.
I know.
Does it not kind of come across like they've even made her look even worse? Because presumably AOC got in contact with her grandma and was like, yeah, the evil conservatives are trying to give you $100,000. You must take this money and not allow it to come into your bank account. I mean, what do you think AOC's grandma actually thinks about that? Like, she just got a call
Well, no,
say she can't accept 100 grand.
The thing is, it's such an obvious partisan attempt to humiliate AOC that there's no way her grandmother can, in good conscience, accept that money, right?
Sure, but it's also really bad that AOC would call her up and say you can't accept that money at all.
Sure. And if AOC was smart, she would have been like, despite what the Conservatives said, I have given her money, and then just, put however much money into a bank account behind the scenes.
Take the 100k, give it to Planned Parenthood. There you go.
Or you could have done that. And to be honest with you, AOC, actually, I think there was a mistake for her to reject it. I understand why she did, again, because don't accept anything from your enemies. That's the principle that AOC is operating under, even if it appears that, it could be to your immediate benefit and you could have used it. Don't accept it because your enemies has not become deeply clear. But he says, tragically, this charitable effort has been sabotaged by forces outside our control. No one thinks it's a charitable effort, man. It's an obvious political attack on AOC. Like, that you could make a charitable effort against for loads of people who really deserve it. But, like, no one thinks you have an emotional investment in, AOC's grandmother's ancestral home. Like, anyway, he says, still, I'm grateful for the outpouring of support for abuela. Never met her. You don't know her. Why do you care? It's empty. It's hollow. Don't do this. Even if AOC isn't. But questions remain. Why didn't she help her own grandmother? Why was our help turned down? We are left to speculate. No, we're not left to speculate. Everyone knows. Everyone knows. And it's absolutely transparent to everyone outside of the conservative Twitter bubble. I'm sorry to be the one who says it, but this is just not good tactics. In the end, our campaign raised $100,000 that could have solved a problem in 10 hours that AOC couldn't solve in 4 years, and we can all be proud of that. As for Abdullah, all we can do now is go pray. Who cares? I don't care about her at all. If AOC doesn't care about her own grandmother, it's not my problem. There are people much closer to me I could feel are more deserving, and that is undoubtedly true about all of the people at the Daily Wire who did this. And again, I don't mean to sound so angry because I like the Daily Wire. I like all the people on there. But I just felt that this was really, really silly. GoFundMe, of course, shut down the campaign and refunded everyone. So that's $100,000 that was raised that could have been used for a good charitable cause that the Conservatives have totally squandered. Why not do something good? Why leave it there? The fact that they just leave it there. Okay, so you can raise $100,000 for a charitable cause. Do it. Saying, we're just going to, who knows why AOC refused this? Who knows why GoFundMe shut it down? No, we're not left to wonder. Obvious political defense by AOC, which, I would probably do in the same position. But instead, now you should start a charitable drive for something good, something worthy. Honestly, veterans probably would be the best bet, because there are doubtless going to be lots of veterans under Joe Biden's reign that need help, that Joe Biden isn't going to help out. He doesn't even feed the soldiers he's employing, So they could doubtless need something and actually use something, and $100,000 could probably go quite a long way. But instead, it's a failed political attack. And AOC hasn't been hurt by this. She's not lost any support by this, and I don't think anyone in the public is particularly awed by this. I don't think this has worked, and don't fund the Libs to own the Libs. The optics are terrible, the strategy's terrible, and it's from people who I think should know better. That's the thing. Again, people I support and like, so I'm just really annoyed by it.
I was trying to think of more, there's an argument there that essentially they've shown that charity can replace government intervention there, which is that
they could have made that point.
The Puerto Rican government, the federal government weren't stepping in. That's AOC's complaint because nasty Trump. And they're like, right, okay, charity. There you go.
But the worst part is it makes the Daily Wire guys look excessively cynical, right? And so, like Matt Walsh,
the people of Puerto Rico would have been a better target. Exactly.
You couldn't be like, AOC is a deeply irresponsible person, but she does raise a good point that the people of Puerto Rico have been left out to dry by the US government, and since Joe Biden's government isn't going to do anything about it, you can still turn it into the partisan attack you want it to be, but you can't turn it into a personal attack against AOC and her grandmother,
I get it's a good joke, but it was $100,000.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's a good joke inside the confines of the sort of Daily Wire Twitter sphere, right? Outside of that, I don't think it resonates at all, and it makes them look worse than they think. And I'm saying this because I want the Daily Wire to succeed. I don't want them to fail. I don't want the communists to take over.
Just thank God that they turned it down. Because people were saying.
They could have literally just redone a house and turned it into a mansion that was just covered in Che Guevara and
or just given it all to
Mao. BLM. Yeah, or given it all to BLM.
They would have sent it on houses anyway. So.
Or Planned Parenthood or whatever. it could have, sending conservative money to fund anti-conservative causes, which is what would have happened with that money, would have been a massive own goal. So, yeah, if you're going to raise money, you send it to the causes you support, not the causes they support. Don't pretend to care about the relations and the family members of the leftists you hate, because we know you don't. We know no one thinks you do. And I think it just made you look kind of cynical and...
thank God they rejected the money, at least.
Yeah, but cynical and kind of profiteering on a crisis, right? And that's not good optics, in my opinion. It was just really bad move, I thought. And it looked ridiculous on the face of it. The Daily Wire guys are raising loads of money for AOC's family. Why? Convoluted Twitter argument is the thing behind it. Oh, God. It's not good. It's not good. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.